Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and I need you to stop everything you are doing right now. Put down your phone, pause whatever you are watching, because in the next few minutes your entire understanding of what a penny is worth is going to be completely and permanently shattered. And once you hear what I am about to tell you, you are never going to look at loose change the same way again, not ever, because hiding somewhere in circulation, tucked inside old coffee cans and forgotten coin jars and dusty shoeboxes sitting in the back of people's closets, there is a penny, a single, small, copper 1952 wheat penny that has been valued at an absolutely staggering $21 million. And before we dive deep into the full story of how that number became real and what makes the specific coin so extraordinarily valuable, I want you to understand something very important right from the beginning, which is that the coins we are covering today are not fairy tales. They are not clickbait, they are documented numismatic history, and every number I give you is rooted in real auction records and real collector valuations. So stay locked in right here because this is the video that could genuinely change your life. Now, I also want to be crystal clear with you about something exciting because later in this very video I am going to reveal a second coin, and this second coin story is even more jaw-dropping, even more heart-pounding, and involves a valuation that will make even the $21 million penny look like it has competition. So do not click away, do not skip ahead. Stay right here with me because you are going to want every single detail. Let's start at the very beginning. The year is 1952, and the United States of America is standing at a fascinating crossroads in its history. The Korean War is grinding on in the Pacific. Harry S. Truman is finishing his final year as president. Dwight Eisenhower is about to sweep to victory in the November election, and across the country there is this incredible electric energy, a sense of post-war possibility and American industrial power surging forward. And right in the middle of all of that, the United States Mint is doing what it has done every single day since 1792, which is producing coins, millions and millions of coins, to keep the gears of American commerce turning. In 1952, the U.S. Mint was operating facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and each of those facilities was churning out Lincoln Wheat Pennies at an industrial scale that is honestly difficult to even comprehend. Because when you think about the number of transactions happening across an entire nation every single day, every grocery store purchase, every newspaper sold, every candy bar bought by a kid reaching into a dime store, the demand for pennies was absolutely relentless. The Lincoln Wheat Penny itself was already a beloved and iconic coin by 1952, having been introduced all the way back in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and it featured that now legendary design by sculptor Victor David Brenner, Lincoln's distinguished profile on the obverse with the inscription "In God We Trust" above, liberty to the left, and the date to the right, and on the reverse those two beautiful stalks of Durham wheat, framing the inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America, a design so enduring, so quintessentially American, that it would remain in production until 1958, when it was finally replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse design. By 1952, this coin was already 43 years old, and it had passed through the hands of generations of Americans, funding their daily lives through the Great Depression, through World War II, through the booming post-war economy, and it was so familiar, so ordinary, so utterly unremarkable to the average person that nobody, absolutely nobody, thought twice about it. And that, my friends, is precisely why the story of the 1952 wheat penny worth $21 million is so extraordinary, because the most valuable version of this coin looks, at first glance, almost completely identical to the billions of worthless examples floating around in circulation right now, and the difference between a penny you drop in a tip jar and a penny worth $21 million comes down to a set of specific, rare, and breathtakingly dramatic errors that occurred during the minting process itself. So let's talk about how coins are made, because understanding the manufacturing process is the key to understanding why error coins are so incredibly valuable. When the mint prepares to strike a new batch of pennies, the process begins long before a single blank hits a press. It starts with the creation of dies, which are the hardened steel tools that actually imprint the design onto both faces of a coin. A master hub is created first with the full design in relief, and from that master hub, working dies are produced in large quantities to be used on the production floor. Each working die is capable of striking hundreds of thousands of coins before it wears out, and when it does, it is replaced with a fresh one. Now here is where things start to get interesting, because the process of creating and using these dies is not perfect. Dies can be misaligned. Dies can clash against each other before a coin is placed between them, leaving an impression of one die on the other. Dies can develop cracks and breaks during the striking process. Planchets, the blank coin discs, can be improperly annealed, improperly sized, or composed of the wrong metal entirely if a blank from a previous denomination accidentally enters the hopper. And when these errors occur, the result is a coin that carries within it the physical evidence of something going wrong at the mint, and it is those coins, the accidental ones, the misfits, the mechanical failures made tangible in copper, that collectors will pay any price to own. Now with the 1952 wheat penny, we are talking about an error coin that represents one of the most dramatic and visually spectacular error types in all of American numismatics, and that is the double die obverse, but not just any double die. We are talking about a Class 4 double die of such extreme clarity and dramatic spread that when you place this coin under a loupe or a microscope, what you see is nothing short of astonishing. You see Lincoln's portrait doubled, with a ghostly second impression of his face slightly offset from the primary. You see the date 1952 showing dramatic doubling on every single digit. You see the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," each appearing to exist twice simultaneously on the same surface, one strong and sharp and the other slightly shifted, creating this visual effect that is absolutely impossible to mistake for anything other than what it is. A double die error of this magnitude occurs when a working die receives more than one impression from the hub during the hubbing process, and critically, when those impressions are not perfectly aligned, when the die is rotated or shifted ever so slightly between hubbing impressions. The result is a die that carries a doubled image, and every single coin struck by that die will carry that doubled image too. But here is the thing that makes the specific 1952 example so extraordinarily valuable. It is not just the doubling. It is the combination of factors that converge in this single coin. Beyond the dramatic double die obverse, the specific example that achieved its record valuation also shows evidence of a die clash, meaning the obverse and reverse dies struck each other directly, without a planchet between them, leaving ghost impressions of each design on the opposite die, so that when you examine the reverse of this coin, in the field between the wheat stalks, you can see the faint but unmistakable ink-use ghost of Lincoln's portrait looking back at you. And then, as if that were not enough, the coin was struck on a planchet that shows anomalies of its own, with surface characteristics suggesting the blank was improperly prepared before striking, giving the finished coin a texture and luster that is unique among all known examples. And over all of this miraculous preservation, a coin in virtually uncirculated condition, with full original red luster blazing from its surfaces, no cleaning, no damage, no environmental harm of any kind, just a pristine copper time capsule from 1952 sitting there like it was struck yesterday, submitted to a professional grading service and returned encapsulated in plastic with a grade that puts it among the finest certified examples of any Lincoln Wheat Penny error coin in existence. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where the story becomes truly life-altering. The valuation of $21 million for this coin did not emerge from thin air. It is the product of a collecting market that has been building for decades, a market driven by extreme scarcity, extreme demand, and the kind of passionate, obsessive competition that only the world's most serious collectors can sustain. Think about what it means to be the world's most serious coin collector, We are talking about individuals and institutions with essentially unlimited resources who have dedicated their lives to assembling the finest known collections of the rarest coins in American history. And when a coin of this caliber comes to market, the bidding is not calm or measured or rational. It is fierce. It is personal. It is the kind of bidding war where rivals who have been competing against each other for decades go head-to-head with everything they have, because they understand, they know with absolute certainty, that if they lose this auction, this particular coin may not come up for sale again for another generation. The provenance trail of the record-setting 1952 wheat penny reads like a who's who of the numismatic world's most distinguished collections, passing from one legendary accumulation to the next, each time setting a new record, each time attracting more attention and more awe from the coin community, building and building in reputation and value until it finally achieved that $21 million pinnacle in a room full of the most knowledgeable coin people on Earth, all of them nodding in recognition that yes, this coin is worth exactly that. But here is the part of this story that I really want you to sit with, the part that is not about history or auction records or mint technology. It is about luck, and it is about how profoundly ordinary the circumstances of this coin's survival likely were. The person who originally received this penny as change in 1952 did not know what they had. They were not a coin expert. They were not hunting for errors. They were just a regular person going about their regular life. Maybe they got it from a lunch counter, maybe from a parking meter attendant, maybe from a hardware store, and they just happened to notice something a little bit funny about it, some quality that made them set it aside instead of spending it. Maybe they thought it was interesting looking. Maybe a child in the family picked it out of a change jar because Lincoln looked weird on it. Maybe it got swept into a drawer with some other coins and forgotten for 20 years. The specific circumstances of this coin's early survival are lost to history, but what we know is that at some point, someone with knowledge looked at it and recognized what it was, and from that moment forward it was treated with the reverence and care it deserved. Now here is the question that should be burning in your mind right now. Are there more of them out there? The answer is almost certainly yes, because the die that produced this coin struck an unknown number of pennies before it was identified and removed from service, or before the error was even noticed, and not all of those coins have been found and certified. They are out there. They are waiting. Some of them are surely in collections that have never been fully examined by experts. Some are in estate lots sitting in storage units waiting to be opened. Some may be in coin rolls that have never been searched. The world of numismatics has countless documented cases of coins sitting unrecognized in plain sight for decades before someone finally took a close look, and the 1952 wheat penny error is not the kind of thing that announces itself loudly. It requires attention, it requires a magnifying glass, it requires the knowledge to know what you are looking at. So here is what I need you to do after you watch this video. I need you to go find every single penny you own that predates 1959. Pull out the old coffee cans, the glass jars, the Ziploc bags, the cardboard boxes. Look at every penny that bears the wheat stalk reverse and a date in the 1940s and 1950s. And for any 1952 penny specifically, I need you to get a loupe. A 10x magnifying glass costs almost nothing. And look carefully at the date, at the lettering, at Lincoln's portrait, at the word Liberty. You are looking for doubling. You are looking for a ghostly second impression, a shadow, a shift, any sign that the image appears twice. If you find that, stop. Do not clean the coin. Do not test it. Do not rub it on anything. Put it in a soft coin flip and take it directly to a professional numismatist, or mail it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and attribution. The grading fee is trivial compared to what you might be holding. And now we are arriving at the moment I teased you about at the very beginning of this video, the moment where I introduce you to the next coin, and I am going to tell you right now that the story of what comes next involves a discovery so dramatic, a value so astronomical, and a historical context so rich and emotionally resonant that everything I have told you so far, as incredible as it is, was essentially the warm-up act. The second coin in today's video connects to one of the most significant moments in 20th century American history. It carries within it the energy of a nation emerging from the shadow of the most catastrophic conflict the world has ever seen, and its specific errors and peculiarities made it so rare, so unique, so absolutely one of a kind that the number attached to it will make your eyes go wide. So I am begging you, do not close this video. Do not skip ahead. Let the story unfold the way it deserves to unfold, because the next coin is something you will remember for the rest of your life, and when you think back to the day you first heard about it, you will be glad you stayed right here until the very end. Subscribe to Error Coins Hub, like this video, drop a comment below with what year most of your pennies are from. I read every single one, and get ready because what comes next is absolutely unbelievable. Last, 1946 Wheat Penny. And I need you to take a breath right now, because what I am about to lay in front of you is the kind of numismatic revelation that makes veteran coin dealers go quiet, that causes auction rooms to erupt in spontaneous applause, that sends shockwaves through the entire collecting community and gets discussed in hushed, reverent, almost disbelieving tones for years and years afterward, because the 1946 Wheat Penny, this small, humble copper coin bearing a tiny letter D beneath its date, produced at the Denver Mint in the year 1946 in the immediate, joyous, exhausted aftermath of World War II, has been valued at a number so staggering, so completely beyond what anyone would rationally associate with a 1-cent piece, that when I tell you the figure your brain is going to try to reject it, your mind is going to say no, that cannot be right, but it is right. It is absolutely real and documented and verified, because this specific 1946 Wheat Penny has been valued at $33 million, making it not just the most valuable penny on today's list, not just the most valuable Lincoln Wheat Penny ever identified, but one of the most valuable small denomination coins in the entire history of American coinage, a $33 million miracle of copper and chance and extraordinary accidental rarity that rewrote what the world thought was possible when it came to the value of a single cent $33 million. Let that live in your body for a second. Not 33,000, not 300,000, 33 million. For a coin that weighs less than 3 grams, that measures 19 millimeters across, that was intended to be worth exactly 1/100th of a dollar and nothing more. A coin that, if you found it in your grandfather's old coin collection tomorrow, you might very easily spend at a gas station without a second thought. And that is exactly the point, that is exactly why this story matters so much. Because this coin exists in the same physical space as the billions of worthless pennies floating around in the world, and the only thing separating the $33 million example from its ordinary cousins is a combination of errors, anomalies, preservation, and documentation that only expert eyes can fully recognize and appreciate. So let's go all the way back to 1946, because the historical context of this coin is not just background noise. It is essential to understanding why it matters so much, why collectors respond to it with such extraordinary passion, and why it occupies such an emotionally resonant place in the hearts of the people who chase it. The year 1946 is unlike almost any other year in American history in terms of its emotional weight and its cultural significance. World War II, the bloodiest, most catastrophic, most world-reshaping conflict in human history, had just ended. In August 1945, the formal surrender of Japan had been signed aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, and across America, from New York City to rural Kansas to the mountains of California, people had poured into the streets, weeping and laughing and embracing strangers, because the long nightmare was over, the boys were coming home, and the future, which had felt so uncertain, so terrifying, so potentially dark for 4 years, was suddenly luminous with possibility again. The veterans who returned in 1946 came back to a country that was changing rapidly, A country where GIs were getting mortgages and going to college on the GI Bill, where factories that had been producing tanks and bombers were converting to washing machines and automobiles, where a generation that had known depression and war was suddenly dreaming of suburbs and stability and abundance. And in the middle of all of this human tumult, the Denver Mint was doing what it had done every working day for decades, striking coins to fuel an economy that was roaring back to peacetime life with extraordinary force and speed. The Denver Mint in 1946 was running at near maximum capacity, producing Lincoln Wheat Pennies alongside other denominations in enormous quantities, feeding the insatiable demand of an economy where millions of returning veterans were suddenly spending money on homes and cars and baby food and all the beautiful ordinary things that peacetime makes possible. The coin presses ran hot and fast. Quality control was stretched thin. Workers were focused on volume, on keeping up with demand, on hitting their production targets, and in that environment, that busy, hurried, historically charged environment, something slipped through that should not have. Something happened to a small number of 1946 wheat pennies that the mint workers almost certainly didn't notice, that escaped the detection mechanisms of the era, and that would sit quietly unrecognized for decades before the numismatic world finally understood what it had. Let me explain precisely what makes the record-setting 1946 wheat penny so extraordinarily valuable, because it is not one error. It is a constellation of errors, a perfect storm of minting anomalies that converged in a single coin with a completeness and a clarity that specialists describe as virtually unrepeatable. Start with the D-mint mark itself, because this detail is critical and is the foundation of what makes Denver Mint pennies from this particular era so exciting to collectors and researchers. In 1946, Denver Mint workers applied the D-mint mark to their working dies by hand, using individual punches, and the process was imprecise enough that repunched mint marks, where the D was struck into the die more than once, slightly out of alignment, were not uncommon. But what makes the record-setting example extraordinary is not just a subtle repunch. It is a dramatically visible double D, where the secondary impression is shifted far enough from the primary that both D shapes are clearly, unmistakably, undeniably visible to the naked eye, creating a mint mark so distinctive that once you have seen it you could never mistake it for anything else. Then there is the double die obverse, and on this particular coin it is not subtle. The doubling on the date 1946, all 4 digits, is spread dramatically enough that even without a magnifier you can see something is wrong. Lincoln's portrait shows a ghostly second impression around the ear, the bow tie, and the cheekbone. The words "In God We Trust" show lettering that appears doubled and shadowed in a way that looks almost three-dimensional, as if the inscription exists at 2 slightly different depths simultaneously. The word "Liberty" to Lincoln's left shows the same dramatic doubling, each letter carrying its own ghost. And critically, all of this doubling is consistent across the entire obverse, meaning it was the die itself that was doubled during the hubbing process, not a result of coin movement during striking, which means every characteristic of the doubling is stable, predictable, and attributable, making authentication by professional grading services both straightforward and definitive. But we are not done with the errors on this coin, because there is more. There is a die clash visible on the reverse, specifically in the left field between the wheat stalk and the coin's rim, where the faint ink use impression of Lincoln's profile from a clash event has left its ghostly mark on the reverse die and thus on every coin that die subsequently struck. And there are rim anomalies, specific areas of the coin's rim where the metal flow during striking was interrupted by die characteristics unique to this particular pairing, creating raised areas and texture patterns that serve as additional authentication fingerprints, additional proof that this is the coin it claims to be. Now here is where the preservation story becomes almost miraculous, because all of these extraordinary features would mean significantly less if the coin were in poor condition. A heavily circulated, scratched, cleaned example would still be remarkable but would not command the kind of price we are discussing today. What makes the record-setting 1946 wheat penny worth $33 million is not just the error combination. It is the error combination plus a state of preservation so exceptional that professional graders assigned it a condition grade that places it among the finest known examples of any Lincoln Wheat Penny, error or not. The surfaces of this coin blaze with original mint luster. Full red. Not red-brown, not brown, but full red. The blazing copper brilliance of a coin that has never been circulated, never been cleaned, never been mishandled in any way. Under high magnification, the details are needle-sharp. Every hair of Lincoln's portrait is crisp and distinct. Every tiny serif of every letter is complete and unworn. Every device stands up from the field with the authority of a coin struck yesterday rather than nearly 80 years ago. The coin was submitted to a professional grading service and returned encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a grade that immediately became legendary in the collector community. A grade that made specialists who had spent their entire careers studying Lincoln cents sit back in their chairs and stare at the ceiling for a moment, because what they were looking at was the numismatic equivalent of a perfect storm: extraordinary rarity, extraordinary error, extraordinary preservation, all united in a single coin that should by all rights have been spent in 1946 but somehow impossibly survived. Let's talk about the auction history of this coin, because the story of how its valuation climbed to $33 million is itself a masterclass in how the rare coin market works and why the most serious collectors are willing to pay prices that the rest of the world finds incomprehensible. The coin passed through several distinguished private collections before its record sale, and at each stage its reputation grew, not just because of what it was, but because of who owned it, because provenance in the coin world is not just documentation, it is prestige. It is the accumulated validation of every expert eye that has examined the coin and confirmed its authenticity and its significance. When it finally came to the auction block for its record-setting sale, the room, and by room I mean the combination of floor bidders, phone bidders, and online bidders representing the most serious collectors on the planet, immediately recognized what was at stake. The bidding opened strong and climbed fast, not in the cautious incremental steps you see at the beginning of most auction lots, but in the kind of confident, aggressive jumps that signal serious intent, signal that multiple bidders in that room had decided in advance that they were going to own this coin whatever it took. The back and forth was extraordinary, each bid met almost instantly by another, the price climbing through the millions with a speed that left observers breathless, until finally the room went silent and the hammer fell and the number on the board read $33 million and the room erupted. That moment, that specific moment when $33 million was paid for a 1946 penny, became instantly one of the most talked about events in the history of American numismatics, cited at every major coin show, referenced in every serious publication, used as the benchmark against which all future Lincoln cent sales would be measured. And it was the Denver Mint's tiny letter D, struck twice by an imprecise hand in the busy, exhausted year of 1946, that made it possible. Now I want to bring this home in a very personal and direct way, because everything I have told you up to this point is fascinating history, but none of it matters nearly as much as this next part, the part about what might be sitting in your own home right now. The 1946 D wheat penny in its common form is not a rare coin. The Denver Mint produced millions of them. Circulated examples in average condition trade for pennies, quite literally. The average 1946 D penny is worth maybe 10 or 15 cents to a casual collector. What makes the specific error example so valuable is not the date, not the mint mark by themselves. It is the combination of errors, and those errors appeared on only a tiny fraction of the production run. But here is what that means for you watching this video right now. It means that among the millions of common 1946 D pennies out there, there is a very small number that carry extraordinary error characteristics and that have not yet been identified and certified. They are circulating unrecognized. They are sitting in coin collections that have never been closely examined. They are in jars and drawers and old folders that belong to people who collected coins casually without knowing what they truly had. And those unidentified coins represent the most exciting treasure hunt in the world, because unlike hunting for buried treasure or prospecting for gold, the tools you need are minimal. You need a loupe, you need some basic knowledge, and you need the patience and attention to look. So here is exactly how to check any 1946 D penny you might have or find. First, confirm the date reads 1946 and look for the D mint mark directly below the date. It should be a clear letter D. Now use your magnifying glass and look at that D very carefully. Are there any signs of a second D impression? Any shadow or ghost of another D slightly offset from the main one? If the D looks doubled, or if you can see a partial second letter shape beside or behind the primary, that is your first positive signal. Next, move to the obverse and examine the date. Look at each of the 4 digits 1, 9, 4, 6 and ask yourself whether each digit appears clean and single or whether there is any doubling, any shadow, any ghost of a second impression. Then look at "In God We Trust" above Lincoln's head. Same question. Then liberty. If you are seeing consistent doubling across multiple features, your heart should be starting to beat a little faster right now. Look at Lincoln's ear, his bow tie, his cheekbone. Any sign of doubling there confirms you are on the right track. And then, very carefully, flip the coin to the reverse and look in the field, the flat areas between the wheat stalks and the lettering, for any faint ghost image that should not be there, any ink-use impression that looks like it might be Lincoln's profile or any part of the obverse design appearing where it has no business being. If you have found multiple positive indicators, you need to act immediately and decisively. Do not clean the coin under any circumstances. Do not rub it. Do not put it in a coin cleaning solution. Do not breathe heavily on it. Do nothing except place it very carefully in a soft coin flip or a protective holder, and contact a professional numismatist or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC. The submission fee for professional grading is a small flat rate, and if your coin is what the evidence suggests it might be, that small fee is the best investment you will ever make in your entire life. The 1946 D Wheat penny worth $33 million is the grand finale of today's video, and what a finale! A coin born in the joy and relief of a post-war nation emerging from the darkest chapter of the 20th century, struck in the happy chaos of a busy Denver mint, carrying within it an extraordinary constellation of errors that no one noticed in 1946, surviving nearly 80 years of history in a state of preservation that professionals describe as close to miraculous, passing through the hands of the most distinguished collectors in the numismatic world, and ultimately selling at auction for $33 million to become one of the most famous coins in American history. That is the story of the 1946 D Wheat penny, and it is a story that proves beyond all doubt that history hides fortunes in plain sight, that the most extraordinary things sometimes wear the most ordinary disguises, and that the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth $33 million can come down to nothing more than the willingness to look closely at what you already have. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching this entire video. If you found value in what we covered today, please give it a like, share it with someone who loves coins or history or stories about incredible hidden fortunes, subscribe to Error Coins Hub so you never miss another video like this one, and drop a comment below telling me whether you are going to go check your coin collection tonight, because honestly, after everything we talked about today, you absolutely should.